everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson. I'm returning to be your host, and once again, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Well, first of all, welcome back. We should all say that. We're building up a head of steam here, I think, aren't we, Joris? Matchday 1, we were bemoaning the fact we had a historical low with only 8 goals. Last week we returned to 29 goals, which was somewhere around the normal. But this week, it's a bonanza. 32 goals.
So what will it be next week? Place your bets. And of course, can't... Not like that, especially on some events that were not likely to happen anymore in a game. Where my team was involved as well.
Yeah, no, it was nice to see some goals going. Although some of them were heavily weighted towards certain games, weren't they? Let's quickly run through those match results from the weekend. The first one didn't have any goals. Standard Liège drew 0-0 with Mechelen. Dender, they surprised everyone with a 4-1 win over Kortrijk on the Saturday. Westerlo beat Union in a 7-goal thriller. That one ended 4-3 to Westerlo, who continue their fine start to the season. Anderlecht have had an unbeaten start to the season, but hasn't been convincing. They could only draw 1-1 with Leuven. Genk came back from 2-0 down to beat Club Brugge 3-2 on the Sunday. Antwerp absolutely battered Sint Truiden 6-1. Charleroi beat Ghent 1-0. And then Cercle Brugge hammered Beerschot 4-1. Their start in Liège, again, kind of not much to say about this game. It wasn't the most exciting kind of Friday night spectacle. I, for one, definitely had the Olympics on and had this in the background. This was very much in the background. I guess kind of most impressive performance from this one would be Ortwin de Wolf with the 5 saves. Standard Liège, I think, in my opinion, had the better of the game. Seemed to have the better of the chances, if you can kind of count some of these as chances. Not all of them were. They just kind of lacked that kind of final cutting edge. But to be fair, if you'd offered them kind of the results they've got to start the season in terms of points and not losing, they'd probably take it, given the situation that they're in. There's definitely kind of a feeling of kind of siege mentality I get from kind of the fans and from them as well, which I think is going to do them well so far this season. For Mechelen, it's the age-old adage, isn't it, of just like lacking that striking kind of threat. I know Lauerback's been praised for running a lot, but I can run a lot. You need someone that can sit the ball in the back of the net, and unfortunately don't seem to have that at the moment, and we don't know where that's going to come from. If they do get Bassett, I don't know if that's the answer. Is playing Nicholas Storm as a striker the answer? I don't know. Ngoy, giving him another chance the answer? I don't know. Scott, it's one that he has to work out, and it looks like he's going to have to work it out within the squad, because we just don't know who they're going to bring in and if the person they're bringing even is going to have the quality that they need.
It's certainly 97 minutes that we're never going to get back, that's for sure. When we were watching this, I did say this has got a goalless draw written all over it because of the lack of tempo in the first half. Neither side looked particularly interested, really. I kind of had a feeling of them going through the motions a little bit, and it certainly wasn't a great watch. I don't even have any particular notes in this game this week. I suppose it's interesting slightly in a footnote sense, in that, of course, David Bates is playing against his former side, his recent former side, and a certain Zeno van Huisden, who's a very well-known figure around Schlesien way, made his debut for Mechelen against his former side as well. And I was wondering coming into this whether either of those were going to score. Well, the thing that I was really keeping an eye out for was the fact that Leon Loberbach has scored more goals against Standard than he has done in his previous 20-odd games. So I thought surely statistically that means he's nailed on for a goal, but nope, nobody could entertain us this weekend, and this game passed as a footnote in history with very little more to be said about it.
Yeah, other more interesting things that were not footnotes in history were happening in Paris for the Belgian side at that time, but that's That's what I did with my Friday afternoon or evening. But luckily for myself, Standard. Still no goals conceded. I guess that's a good thing. They only scored one as well. I mean, are they going to Arsenal their way towards the title this way? Well, I guess they would need more of the ones in the nils are already there in place, but a bit more of the ones needed. But yeah, of course, I think they would be happy with that. The Wolf, twice recovering initial misjudgments as well, and helped by by the bar at those occasions. And yeah, apart from that, I only wrote down like set pieces, at both sides, the biggest chance creators. I think it was Bulat as well. He is showing that he does have a really good set piece in him. Already try over the course of the past few weeks, tried an Olympic goal, fittingly, of course, a few times that hit the bar. Yeah, and I agree with Ben. I guess like if any side would have to win this game, it would have been Standard. But did they really overwhelmingly make their point, their statement there? That not either. So I guess a 0-0. It's a bit of an outlier in this weekend, luckily. And when we're talking about all the goals scored this weekend, it didn't start off great, but everything came later on.
Yeah, we could have just not even mentioned that game, to be honest, and I don't think anyone would have even noticed. Let's go to the Dender Football Complex. Definitely the best name of the stadium. I'm sure it's not actually, there must be a better name than that for this. But they were treated to some absolute fantastic goals in this game. I think the kind of debate I've got and the question I want to ask you guys is which one was better, the first one or the second one? The one from Kvet is just like a series of one-touch passes, which I thought just a lovely flowing move. And then the Nsimba one's just that kind of like moment of like real quality. David Hirinko has been given the assist for that Nsimba goal, but I don't think anyone deserves an assist because the man just did it all himself with the touch, the volley. It's just a beautiful goal. And I think going into the season, we were kind of wondering, Nsimba was one of those players, wasn't he? Where he did really well last year in the second tier. Like, could his game translate into the first tier? And so far, he looks like a player that's kind of willing to do stuff like this and kind of got the talent potentially to back it up. And then you've got Mohamed Burke coming off the bench and scoring 2 goals as well. The summer signing, who I think really did benefit. Like, we saw him a little bit at East End in the Pro League, didn't we? But he's definitely benefited from that kind of season in the second tier with East End to then come back now. And I think I said to you guys, I quite like their strikers in this sense. I like Nsimba. I quite like what I've seen from him. I like what I saw from Bert now, like coming back in and stuff. And it's just like, can the rest of it kind of hold together? And in this game, it definitely did. I mean, they were definitely helped by Mampasi getting sent off, but I did feel like watching this game, they were always going to score goals and create chances. And yeah, for Alexanderson after the game was pretty disgusted with what his side kind of showed him. And I'm not surprised, to be honest, because yeah, it was pretty poor from them. But for Dender, what an incredible start to the season it's been. And who'd have thought they'd have more points than a couple of other sides at this point? I know it's early, but even at this point, we didn't think they'd be kind of unbeaten.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because last week, me and Joris said, I think 3 times between the two of us, maybe even 4 times, try not to read too much into any early indications in the opening few weeks. Give it till match day 10 or 12 before, you start to draw any conclusions about anything. And that warning, we'll just send that warning out again now this week. We'll get the first one out of the way. But that aside, yeah, they've started really, really well. They'll be absolutely delighted with that. 7 out of 9. If you'd have told them they were going to do that, especially with the some of the fixtures they'd had, having played Ghent and Union, it's 2 of the 3 in their opening weeks, unexpected. And Ben's talking there about the front line, which certainly looks not out of place at this level at the moment. Jordi Saladio, he's got 1. Bruni and Simba, he's got 1. Mo Bert's got 3 and 2 now. And also they brought in Aurelien Schädler just a few days ago as well. So there's a little bit of extra competition for that front line. So they've got some options there who at the moment seem to be enjoying themselves. Interestingly, they are slightly, well, I say slightly, they are seriously outperforming on their XG at the moment. XG warning, we know it's not scientific and we know that it's based on 3 games, which doesn't really tell us anything. But if we take it as it is, their XG at the moment is 3.1 based on what they've actually created. But they're outperforming that by twice that at 6 goals at the moment. So although that, that's just a little insight into the fact that their true standing probably lies somewhere in the middle of that. So they have started quite well and are performing efficiently, which is what you want, particularly when you consider that their overall possession across the opening 3 games is amongst the lowest in the league so far. We know that more possession doesn't equal more goals, but they're taking their chances at the moment. And the second goal, just to answer Ben's question, to come full circle on that, I thought the second goal and Simba's goal for me was the better one, just because it was just a pure isolated moment of solo technique that kind of came out of nowhere. Admittedly, the space opens up and it's gagging for the shot, but it's just, the technique in it is just absolutely bang on in every sense. And yeah, 4-1 flatters Dender a little bit on the whole, I think, taking every opportunity, because there wasn't a massive amount between the two sides in this game, albeit Kortrijk were poor, and Freyr Alexanderson is right to be annoyed, because last week when they beat Cercle at the Jan Breidel, they showed flashes, some good flashes during that game, and you thought, okay, that's something to take into this week. And this is an important thing, I think, for Kortrijk and Alexanderson, and this will be the thing that annoyed them more than anything else, I bet you. These are exactly the sorts of games that Kortrijk need to get points in, even if it's just 1 point, let alone 3, if they're going to stay up reasonably comfortably or stay up at all. So that's an early warning for them, and that, I'm sure, was probably part of the post-match message.
Yeah, on Kortrijk, I think you guys summed it up quite nicely already. Mainly, indeed, losing a game they shouldn't. Or you can also turn that around, but that's touching on Dender again, which I will come to shortly. But and Alexanderson clearly furious at his squad as well, of course. Yeah, and last week we were complimenting Gunnarsson in goal a bit too much, I suppose, because it's not entirely his fault, of course, especially the first 2 goals he couldn't do much about. But yeah, still, at least one of Berte's goals, he probably should have done better, could have done better, and just, conceding 4. And not only Gunnarsson, maybe I'll make it a bit more broad, like Gunnarsson and the defense of Kortrijk. Yeah, that was not completely in place, because indeed, it's a really great finish from Simba, but he got all the time and space. He wanted it for it as well, of course. And touching on that and the expected goals there, of course, already segues towards Dender here. Of course, that one is only worth 0.15 expected goals. I'm not sure if you can really rely on such outliers on the course of the whole season. Of course, for me also the first goal was I'm more a fan of this kind of team in one touch team goals. So for me, that's the one. But okay, it's unfair to pick one, I guess. Why don't have both is what Dender players thought, and rightfully so. And just also, Berthe was and still is leading, but now he's not the sole anymore with the top scoring charts. After only scoring his first goal, as we touched on last week in the Pro League last week. So that's really interesting to see as well. The first one was a really great finish as well. The second one, like I mentioned, that I feel like Gunnarsson could have done better there. But okay, the game was actually lost by then already, of course. But Alexanderson was really nailing on the fact that you can't have you can't concede 4 goals. I'm not sure if 3 goals would have made a difference in this case, I guess, even if he would have saved that. Terrible defending from Kortrijk in Dender firing at all cylinders, as mentioned by all the stats, and and the points they're grabbing, of course, a great start to the season for them.
Dender have had, a great opening, as we've been talking about, but next week they're due to go to the debut with Sabi Stein to play a side that are doing major leaking of goals. So Dender are going to be looking at this, I think, guys, and rightfully licking their lips, because their confidence will be up, certainly, after a good start. And they're playing a side now who look really, really vulnerable.
So 3-0 for Sint Truiden on that one.
That's right. You mentioned the goalkeeping there, Joris, and I think when we get to the Sint Truiden game, we can talk about some of the worst goalkeeping we probably saw this weekend. So Gunnarsson probably got away with having his worst weekend then. Let's go to Veselo. I know football ratings aren't always the best, but when you've got a keeper's one rated 5.8 and one rated 5.3, you've had a goal fest. Started pretty well for Union. Big Kev Rodriguez scored, and I think there's a lot of chatter recently kind of about how he needs to take the place of Nielsen and really kind of perform this season. But after that, it was just Westerlo just going bang, bang, bang on the counter attack and from free kicks and stuff like that. Like Timmy Simons has just decided that he's going for Scott Coyne. He's like, I'm gunning for Scott. I heard what you said about me, and I'm just going to win the league. That's what I'm going to try and do. I did see a thing about that. They were like, he did this like shock thing last year with Dender. Is he going to do a shock thing with Westerlo? And it's like, well, let's just chill out. But they look fun. They look good. He's getting the best out of some of these guys. Mabude had a decent game. Siadamash again had a decent game, and they were comfortable at 4-0, 4-1. So Union then did obviously put it back to 4-3, and yeah, it was almost like at 4-1, I was getting a bit concerned. I was like, what's happened to Union? Like, this is just a bit bizarre. And then they get it back to 4-3. Like, oh, here they go. They're back again. And I don't know, it's not been a great week for them. Obviously, they lost 3-1 to Slavia Praha in the Champions League qualification, which not ideal. Thomas Chorley, old Varagam striker, scoring a double as well. That was away from home. So maybe when they get back, they can do a classic Union and it's been kind of a comeback. But yeah, slightly concerning. Not like it's just not been a great start to the season by their level. Whereas with Westerlo, it's just like they're fast becoming a side that you're like, actually, yeah, I'm going to watch a lot of Westerlo this season if this is the sort of like exciting front kind of facing team they're going to be, which is kind of reminiscent of what Rick DeMille was doing with them a little bit and getting how he's getting into play. It's like Simons has come in and taken that kind of idea and just pushed it a little bit further forward as well. So yeah, a great game, this one.
Well, Timmy's going to quite like what I say next, even though I was critical about him in particular at the start of the season. They're performing really strongly just now, particularly in their output. I mean, in this game alone, just this weekend, 23 shots, 10 in target, 7 big chances, 5 other chances missed. They're really creating a lot. And, not only are they scoring, but, the wide men, particularly Mabude and Syed Manesh at the moment, are performing at a good level. So there are, there's a number of threats there, for sides to contend with that are really performing well. And I think they've really used their pre-season really well by the looks of it. They haven't had any distractions. They've obviously responded to Timmy Simons, despite me saying I'm not his biggest fan based on some of his previous work. He's heard that. So if anyone else wants a motivational pep talk, we've been here before with others, then, we're the best place to come. But yeah, their output at the moment is really, really good. The caveat to that is, can they maintain that, or how long can they maintain that for? Because that's a really good level for a side to set, and I doubt whether they can maintain anything like that. So getting the points on the board early is really, really important. I think he's found a system there, Timmy Simons, that works and that the players like, which is obviously really, really important because they're responding to that. And a shout out for someone else as well, Haspelat in the midfield, the defensive midfielder. I think he's been really good as well at breaking up play and getting them into, really positive high turnover situations with his defensive midfield work and creating attacking transitions really, really quickly. So I think there's 4 players there. There's Haspelat, Stazin, Mabude and Syed Manesh, who are at a really, really good level, I think, at the moment, and really producing the goods. And they just look relaxed to me, and that's a good sign. Union, on the other hand, I think interesting hearing Sebastian Pocagnoli this week talking about August being a month where for most sides there's a lot of major adjustment going on, and he was honest enough to say, look, I might rotate a little bit, just to give some players a chance and to get to know some of the players I don't know that well yet, which is honest and refreshing, and I think probably a good thing. In a way, he's kind of on a hiding to nothing. He's coming into the club, a slight surprise appointment. He's coming in on the back of the previous 3 coaches who all did extremely well, and he's expected to maintain that. I thought Castro Montes was very good this week, actually. He created a lot, and he was at a level that I thought was more than acceptable. I'm not too worried about them. I just felt that this game was kind of gone from them kind of quite early on in the second half. But because they are a good side, and they are a good side still, they actually made a really good fight of it in the end to try and get something out of it. But in truth, the game was really gone from them fairly early on in the second half.
Yeah, in Westerlo, I think they now have only 1 point less than they had after the whole first round of fixtures in last season. So I guess that's already it will be tough to still underperform against that parameter at least. But that I guess they would be safe on that, of course. And not only that, it's the first time in history they actually start with winning 3 games in a row. So historical start for them. Yeah, 4 goals as well, but actually their central striker didn't score even as well. And on top of that, like unlike Dinder, they did not really outperform, like narrowly outperformed their expected goals. I think it was 3.72 or something, but like, yeah, if you round that up, that would still be the amount of goals they got. So that's a more sustainable sign, at least a sign that it could be more sustainable. It's a bit early to say it's sustainable, of course, but just indeed not scoring enough, arguably. But yeah, that's on the other hand, creating more is always good as well. Union, I'm still not sure. It's still too early to really be too worried about them, but Maurice is becoming an issue. I think we need to talk about Maurice. But it's again, so maybe not, but in both games last week and this weekend, so in Europe and here, he did make some mistakes, or at least could have done better at some occasions. And yeah, I mean, it's not a complete secret that we all are like, thinking about should they not really get a replacement there. And I know there's definitely reasons for him to be staying in even first goalkeeper. I think he's probably one of the better personalities in the squad, and like he's even the captain. So I mean, it's not easy to put him outside as well after you made that decision. But yeah, it's still a bit worrying that he is still their main goalkeeper in times like when they are also struggling other parts of the field as well. Okay, in the end, of course, they scored 3 here, so that's not necessarily too bad. And we shouldn't oversee the fact that despite me not necessarily liking the player himself, but another personality that probably would have been captain otherwise is still missing as well in Burgess. So he was not on the pitch. And yeah, that's one of the reasons probably that their defense is leaking goals as of late on a very short sample of games, of course, as well, but and against decent opponents. But I also wanted just to talk a little bit about their new striker, Prometheus David, of course, with like, I guess, a remarkable performance, you could say. It's like he got a goal in the end. He got an assist, and actually, I feel like he should have gotten a goal there, but that's something else I will be talking about soon. But he still also nonetheless felt a bit like Bambi on ice at times, like not really fitting in completely, and like not only in the team, but more like in like at the level and then everything, and like needed some time, but he did get in good positions, obviously, so he did get the time. And but arguably also could have scored one more, should have scored maybe even one more, one-on-one against Bolat. But yeah, and then of course like the assist there, Fusani stealing the goal there from him. I don't like to see that in general. Just it's especially now. Of course, it would have been his first goal. I understand, of course, like players they just want to get their statistics up, and like, I guess like he was not really thinking about it, and maybe I'm making more out of it than it is, most likely. But still, like it was not the only occasion this weekend. I will come to another occasion as well, actually. But just in general, I'm not sure if that's a good sign for the team spirit and so on. Like if we try to dig deeper earlier on, of course, I suppose everything will be settled. So, and if there is even anything.
Yeah, I mean, at least they both scored in the end. Your description, the Bambi on ice and not looking cut to level, is the exact same feelings I had at the start of another Union Saint-Gilloise striker's kind of career in Belgium, and he just got bought by Club Brugge for 6.5 million. So there's future there. We'll get to him in a bit because I saw a couple of interesting articles about him, which I found reasonably hilarious at this stage of the season. Let's go to Brussels. Anderlecht against Leuven. This one finished 1 goal apiece. The first goal was the Anderlecht goal was really, really nice, actually. I thought there's an underrated kind of turn and assist kind of moment between Jari Verscheren and Marius Joykens. I thought their kind of build-up play for it deserved maybe a little bit more loving. I thought that was really nice. Mertens' goal, obviously a fantastic strike from him as well. Nice to see him kind of back amongst the goals. Yeah, I just feel looking back on this that Anderlecht should have won it. Like, Indri did have an incredible chance to get a second goal for Leuven, but he's just not, his game is not finishing. Like, obviously, everyone who listened to this podcast for years know I was a massive Conan Indri fan. I still think there's a player in there. I just don't think as a central striker, I just don't think that's his position, because his finishing isn't that great. And he kind of showed it in this game. It's just, you're just looking at this Anderlecht side though, aren't you guys? And you're just like, someone get a central defender in. Like, this is the risk you have with the Jan Vertonghen kind of reliance. He's so much older and he's going to get injured much more frequently as he gets older. So you just need to go out and get one. Nice to see Francis Amuzu back. That was nice. I thought his injury was going to keep him out for a little bit longer. And speaking of strikers, I guess, I don't know what you guys think, but there's one guy, Luis Vasquez, not convinced. And I don't think I've really been convinced on him since he joined. He had a little bit of a run, didn't he, where it looked like he maybe could be kind of a great player off the bench for them. But it just doesn't strike me as the sort of player that if Dolberg went down, you could really rely on to consistently score the goals. Not that Dolberg consistently scores the goals anyway, but he's still at a pretty, for his stage of career, like what he's had to kind of deal with in terms of not having good seasons. He had a pretty decent season last year, and it's nice for him to kind of get up and running. Yeah, more frustration, more pressure on Brian Riemer, but I don't think it's just Riemer. I think there's more pressure on the entire club to kind of get things moving in the transfer market. That isn't just going to Denmark or signing Danish players. I think that's probably what people are asking.
Well, last week me and Joris touched upon the fact that there is a little bit of temperature rising on Brian Reimer from sections of the Anderlecht support who are not happy with the way they're playing and what they're seeing. The problem that section of the support have got, as I was trying to highlight last week, is basically he's getting pretty decent results still at the moment at a level that is keeping that pressure at bay, if you like. His problem, of course, is that there isn't really the depth or quality across that squad at the moment to sustain what they would like to. So, post-match he says, look, I'm disappointed because, of course, they couldn't play with the intensity required for the majority of the second half to break the block in the end and ultimately get the win. As Ben was saying, they probably should have, because for most of the game, they did look the better side. Leuven, it's a hard-won point for them. They're quite happy with it, and I can understand that. Brian Reimer's analysis is, look, ultimately we might not be where we want to be yet, but actually we're on 7 out of 9 as a start. And he says, most people would absolutely take that, and including them. So there's this weird paradox of a section of the fan base don't like what they're seeing because there isn't the depth in particular positions in the pitch yet to give Brian Reimer much flexibility or choice in any real sense. But yet he's getting good enough results still at the moment to keep himself ahead of that. I suppose he's hoping privately that come the close of the window, there's 2 to 4 new faces of decent quality come in. Ben highlighting the central defensive position is important. I think we know the issue there. That re-signing of Vertonghen is already looking a little bit questionable because of an unfortunate injury he's picked up where he's going to be out for a few weeks, which leaves them very light there. Today they've been linked quite heavily, although they're not progressing it at the moment. There has been interest in Chris Mepham at Bournemouth, but Anderlecht feel like they've been linked with 101 players in 101 positions actually over the last month or so. Some of them they have tried to bring in and not been able to kind of close, and others haven't progressed as much as perhaps the club would have liked. So they're working very hard. I don't doubt that. It's quite obvious that they are, but certain things aren't happening, and they're trying to that difficult juggling act of biding your time for a player that you really want and excites you, is right for the position, and time kind of getting away from you. But it's an odd one, this, because how long can Brian Reimer stay ahead of that chasing criticism behind him before he kind of needs some help in a way.
Yeah, and guess who was has a connection with the player they are linked with today? Yes, Brian Reimer. So they're really still working their connections, even if it's not a Danish player this time. But which I guess in their situation is not necessarily the worst thing to do still. I guess it's also, it has paid off in some cases. In other cases, it hasn't. I think there are a few things in the pipeline, I think, as well. But this weekend's game definitely gave some extra fuel to these fans that we discussed last week. Because it was just not a great game in any sense. They could have won it, of course, but it was not a great game. And like especially the second half, they really did not create anything except in the end. Ultimately, the free kick with Amuzu, which actually was really close to being the winning goal as well, of course. First half was not too bad. And of course, Maartens, he has a history of scoring long-range goals against Anderlecht as well. Decent start for Leuven with 5 out of 9 and no losses. Ultimately, we'll have to see how that continues. Like with any side, it's still early to tell, but I will have taken a point here. They would have signed for that before the game, most likely. On the other hand, also created some of the best chances, actually, and also at other occasions, not doing enough on the counter-attack chances they had. They still had a few more chances, especially completely at the end, that they wasted the big chance to, really win the game even, which arguably would not have been, the really deserved result. I think ultimately a draw is more or less, what was to be expected based on how the game looked like, and Anderlecht not, being able to create much despite possession most of the time. Verscharen's 150 Jupiler Pro League game, I suppose, is worth a little shout. And the other thing you already mentioned as well is, of course, Vertonghen being out and then Simic really swimming without him. So I'm not sure if I completely agree with Scott's point of Vertonghen's not signing already being a bit, maybe pointless or anything. I think for him that is also the value lies a bit more next to the pitch as well, in the coaching. But unfortunately, of course, if he's not there on the pitch, then someone else needs to step up there. And at the moment, they just literally have no one that is able to do so. No real leader at the back. And Simic, you can't really say much about the quality of the player himself yet, but he didn't have a good game. That you can say. But whatever that means, he's super unexperienced, of course. So it's difficult to really see the quality of the player, judge the quality of the player there based on that. And additionally, of course, also another fact, I went a bit into the Scott role this weekend. I guess looking at like the taking the goals and the personalities and so on, that Struijk is completely being really frustrated to be swept off, and rightfully so. I feel as well. Like I'm not sure if that was the right call, especially when he brought on Vasquez, like Ben touched on. Indeed, not completely convinced, but also Struikens was actually still, I'm not saying he had a good game, but he's still one of their creative players and it could create something out of nothing at some point. That will not have helped Riemer's case as well, regardless of the results in the eyes of a certain part of the fan group, of course, and of Struikens himself as well, of course. The management of Struikens is actually something that might become a topic, I have a feeling, because indeed he is one of the more creative players that they're having, and he's not getting as much game time as he would have wanted, I think, and many of the fans actually probably also, given the current state of affairs and players that are at their disposal. Just a side fact as well. He was just really frustrated getting off, which is a good sign in itself, I guess, for players. It's not on its own not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not sure if he needed to be taken off at the 1-1 20 minutes or so before, or was it even half an hour before the end of the game, when you need to force something still. I'm not sure that was the right call.
No, I think he should be kind of one of the first names on the team sheet, to be honest, after what his kind of numbers and stuff last year was so good, that he's so young and kind of ready to push things forward. And in a way, he's more consistent than Dreyer in a game. Like, you're probably more likely, like, if Dreyer's not performing well in a game, you may as well take him off, because he kind of flits in and out, and if he's out sort of thing. So it's a balance that they've got to make. But I think Reimer's under pressure, and I think while we've said, they may not have the players in order to win, like, we may think they don't have the squad, I still think they should be able to beat Leuven at home, like, with the squad that's out there on paper, and kind of even with some of the players they brought off the bench. I think that's not an unrealistic expectation. If they conceded loads of goals, I'd be like, fair enough, like, they've not got the defence to kind of do that. But I think this is the sort of game, and the Sint Truiden performance was pretty naff, and we've seen Sint Truiden just get pumped twice. So that doesn't, I think the Antwerp result and the Charleroi result for Sint Truiden really doesn't help Reimer in terms of, because the attack is there, isn't it? It's the defence that's the issue. But defensively, they're kind of all right, and it's weird. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Brian Reimer kind of admit exactly what Ben was kind of pointing out there as well post-match. He was saying that, he's disappointed, that they didn't have the intensity to break the block, as I was saying, in the end. But that he said fundamentally this is a game we should be winning every week. So he knows as a home game, and with what they can do when they're clicking, that that should be a guaranteed 3 points for them. It's just interesting. I find, like I was saying when I was talking about the game, that what Brian Reimer's managing to do very well at the moment is just stay a couple of steps ahead of all of the worries and the criticism. He will just be hoping, as I was saying, that that a lot of those are removed from him, and that Jesper Fredberg can do his work come the end of the window, which, to be fair, actually, and I've been pointing this out to some Anderlecht fans this week in conversations, last season, by and large, he did do that. It was a tricky sort of window period for them. It was quiet for a while, but come the end of the window and as the season progressed, things by and large worked out quite well for them. So, they'll be hoping that is the case again. And it's important for Brian Reimer that it is, because he's not talking a lot publicly about, not a lack of support, but, not having new ingredients to work with and to stir into the pot. It's difficult for him. And he'll be a number of coaches who at the moment is thinking, look, me and my staff can coach, but, the players have to step up sometimes, and that's a difficult balancing act, because he was obviously disappointed with the level of some of his players, but didn't want to tear into them too early in the season when he's already aware of a very difficult situation overhanging him, because he doesn't really have any other options. So it's a tricky one for him at the moment, and I do have a little bit of sympathy for him, if I'm honest.
He's doing the old Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Man United. Just, he's about to be sacked if he doesn't win this game, and he'll win the game, and then he stays, and it's Ole's at the wheel and all that sort of stuff that United fans used to love. Another manager, two managers that we kind of yo-yoed between being under pressure at points in this game. I think the Genk Club Brugge game is quite funny, because Club go 2-0 up and Scott, you were like, I think Fink's under some pressure. Then Rosowski scores the winner, and I was like, I think Nicky Haynes probably under some pressure. He brought out the lucky jumper, guys, and the lucky jumper it's got to get in the bin. It's just, it was I found this one, like a really enjoyable, interesting game to watch, actually. And it's interesting to see kind of who's been getting the stick and kind of the blame for this. Mignolet's coming under a lot of heat for his performance in this game. Doesn't help when the guy that came in last season to help him win the title is sat on the bench. He's younger, he played very well, he could easily slot in. You know what he can do now, like Jackers is there and he can easily come in. Nielsen's getting a little bit of, is he actually a flop? Already coming in, which I think is a little bit too early. And the article I read made some good points about how he's used to playing in a two-striker system, but Anderlecht were never going to, Club Brugge were never going to do the two-striker system. So it's like, well, why did you buy him then? Another part of the article said, and the club want him to be a target man, but he's never really been a target man. So then he was also like, well, why do they buy him then? I don't know. It is too early to tell. Lots of people, like we spoke about this with Rodriguez and how Thiago was kind of criticised to begin with. But a lot of people made the point, at least with Thiago, you could kind of see his work rate and stuff, which to refer to Nielsen, that's not always been his game. And I do think he does work hard, but it's interesting how he's come under a lot of criticism, whereas like someone like Solis, who came off the bench and had a great chance, didn't take it, has kind of avoided it. Noosa's assist, I think, deserves a bit of credit. That was a lovely kind of cut through and pass to Olsen. Really nice finish from him. Rocadale getting so much criticism and then coming up with the goals. I think the second goal, that cross in from, was it Stoikers who put the cross in? Because that was just an unbelievably good cross. And I think this was a really important game for Stoikers in the sense of scoring and assisting, to kind of be like, okay, I'm not just here because Fink likes me. I can actually contribute to this team without Knus in the side. And then Hosowski's winning goal, that's a fantastic strike from him. Great to see, especially in a Genk side that's so kind of heavily slanted towards youth. And we're like, who's the next young player coming through, to see the 32-year-old step up and kind of score the winner, and Fink just going absolutely mad, absolutely loving it. Crisis is the word in the papers around Club Brugge already. I think it's a little bit early, but the moment that kind of media storm starts to roll in Belgium when it comes to club, like, you know you're in trouble as the head coach. And when Van Aken and Mignolet are speaking to the press about kind of like, oh, what's going on this shouldn't be happening. When those guys start to speak, I'd get worried as a head coach, because they are so influential in there. And I don't think they don't get managers sacked. They'll always come out and support them and stuff like that. And they were really praising Hay and begin with. But the moment those two guys start to speak, you know that something's not quite right in the camp at the moment. But Joris, I guess you're pretty chuffed to get the first win under the belt, even though it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and it happened in dramatic fashion. And yeah, a bit of a whirlwind game, but a really entertaining kind of Sunday kickoff, wasn't it?
So many things to say about this game, but I'll start with picking up with the opponent's view, I guess. I think Hein is out based on what's been in the pressure if he doesn't win against Antwerp this weekend. That's actually the tone in the media at the moment. So also the Verhagen already been in the dressing room 3 times, and they have had only 4 official games. So yeah, that's shows that there is a lot of pressure. Also, especially since I personally already doubted it at the end of the last season, and it seems like not only I was, also inside the club, people were still a bit doubting, but they basically had to give him the contract because of the whole run and getting the championship. But I'm not sure if everyone was really aligned, and if those people that were not so convinced themselves, it looks like they would not be waiting that long to let their voice be heard as well in such occasions. So also it was Club Brugge's worst start in 60 years' time as well. So that can't deny that fact. Those are the bare facts, of course. Yeah, and I guess CK really did not have a great game. He was also victimized after a while. Mechelen also, I mean, he probably had a decent game, but somehow it's always in his game. He seems to always give a few penalties away each season, and unfortunately, this was then the one that, well, is probably a direct cause of the turnaround being possible at the right moment for Genk and the wrong moment for Club Brugge, with enough time spare for Genk to really still go past Club Brugge in the end. High indeed, wearing the grey sweater. Dare I say that's a bit ridiculous, like for a grown man in this kind of temperature. Okay, if it was winter or anything, that's like this kind of temperature, and then going for this kind of belief. I mean, I think it's not necessarily something that shows that you're trusting in your qualities, but more like like the lucky charm. Okay, in the way, I get that as well, of course, but unfortunately, it turned against him this time. And on High, personally, I think also, I'm not sure if he caused the turnaround, but his changes definitely have not helped to stop it as well, like a bit too defensively. Yeah, so that's on Club Brugge already a large part of what I'm seeing. Also, just then on both sides there were a lot of changes as well, so that's also partially still on Club Brugge. I think they made 7 changes even with comparison to last week. I think it were 4, I think, including Congolo featuring it first time this season as well. The youngster, and did overall over the whole course of the whole game scene a really good performance against Nilsson. Not alone, of course, as well. It helps in with the 3 at the back with Smets also having a decent performance, and of course notably Van Krombrugge took his place in goal, and not Pender's choice more for experience there, as Ben was also mentioning, for Rozovsky then scoring that final goal. He has a knack of that, scoring goals outside of the box as well, like much like Martens against Anderlecht, Rozovsky against Club Brugge, specifically in games with a lot of goals as well. I think the last time it happened, 2 times it happens, was in a 3-2 loss from Genk against Club Brugge and a 3-3 draw in the cup, but eventually Genk lost. But they were in relatively close succession to each other those times. That's been a while, but yeah, but this one must have felt sweet for me. It definitely did as well. So many things to say about Genk still as well, so sorry if I'm taking a lot of time here, but it's the first time this season, of course, they scored 3. Also, the first time since the second time in 2024 they've scored more than 2. The last time was against ultimately relegated Molenbeek side in February, so also a long time ago. And also that specific game against Molenbeek was in last season also the only time they have come back from behind and won a game. So they have already equaled that now, and even that was only one goal behind, and now it's 2 goals behind. So at least mentally, a really good boost. I have no idea if they can take it on, of course, in the later stages and towards the next game and the rest of the season. But definitely good, and notably, of course, also admittedly can't also not Van Kromberg had a decent game, but I guess on the second goal he should have done better. Yep, I feel that was a mistake, defensive mistake. Maybe also, it was a bit of a weird situation anyway, I guess, with the ball. It looking like at least that the ball came from Nielsen's hand, although after looking back, I think it just came off his chest and it was a rightful decision. And also, I think there's some rules in there still with the handball rules that I need to follow up. But anyway, I think it was okay that goal was allowed, but there was some defensive cock-up, maybe a little bit with the goal as well. I'm not sure he was running in the right positions there after the unexpected deflection, so I mean, can't really blame him there. But Van Kromberg, when he came, he should have gotten that ball. And of course, after that 0-2, there were already 3 changes, I think, that were standing in place for Genk right before before that goal fell, that were planned. So the return of Brian Heijnen as well, the captain, after his last game was the infamous game against Westerlo. That's already a while ago as well. But also in the end, Caretzas came towards. It was a 4 change that has been made, and there was a change of system from the 3 at the back to 2 at the back, which is a bit against Fink's playing style. And that's also what I'm not sure about, if this is something that can be carried on, because after the game it sounded like Fink, he was still saying like, it's not something I like to do. It's good, I guess, that he's flexible in his approach, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to already throw his beliefs away after such a short time to switch towards this system that in this game at least worked better. And maybe it will work better later on. Honorable mention, of course, also to Caretzas, and for having literally an immediate impact, having a great movement, and then a cross that led towards the penalty. Steukers, I don't think he actually had a really great game on his own, but he provided some stats, so that's good, of course, scoring that penalty and getting that assist as well. Tolu, I'm never going to be the biggest fan of him. There are also still rumors that he might be leaving, although Fink has also in his post-match said like that he doesn't. Well, that I'm not a fan of such things, because it's clearly just stating something to have to do that. He's the best striker in Belgium if he wants to believe in that, if he really believes in himself as much. And I mean, I don't need to admit, but like, yes, he can be useful in certain situations, but saying that is a bit much, and like that you can't find another striker under 10 million before from the same quality. Yeah, well, we've seen other sides doing that over the course of the past 2 seasons anyway. So yeah, but okay, that also, of course, I'm not sure if we should read too much in that, because there are already rumors, and maybe it is also, of course, he scored now as well to drive the price up. Yeah, that's a wait-and-see situation there, I guess. One player that really looks to be leaving is Fadera. He has arrived in Como, and it seems like everything's said and done there. If I'm not mistaken, Genk are basically waiting on some bank guarantees to finalize that deal, because they want to be sure they get the money. But I guess that should be a formality. Okay, I think I've ran on for a long while already. I'm not sure if I left you guys much to talk about.
Well, to be fair, it was one of those games actually where there was probably quite a lot to say about. As Ben said in his segue into this, I think there was a lot to say. I agree with almost everything Joris has said. I do think Genk deserve to win, purely from the point of view of their pressing and the fact that they kept going right to the end, even at 2-0 down, when you thought, okay, this game's kind of getting away from them now. No, they didn't take their foot off it. They absolutely kept going and were pretty relentless at that. And I was kind of impressed by that. Another of Fink's traits, playing to their manager's strengths. and the way he wants them to play. So in that sense, I'm glad that they got it over the line, particularly when the winning goal was was one of such quality, the sort of goal that, should be winning any game, just brilliant. And I'm sure it got Joris up out of his seat. Yeah, brilliant goal. Yeah, I mean, I think on club, Joris mentioned worst start since 1964. There's no getting away from that. That's bad. Are we seeing a return to the kind of malaise, the lack of sharpness, the lack of engagement and passion in those players that ultimately saw Ronnie Dyla booted out the door? There's something about club that, they're now developing a bit of a pattern at having a kind of slow start to seasons as well, which obviously isn't good. And as Joris was saying, the signals inside the club are recognising that and aren't happy about it. Some choice messages have been sent out about a very big game coming up this weekend at the Jan Breidel between Club and Antwerp. So the pressure's definitely rising there. And Nicky Ian did say, look, me and my staff can do our work during the week. We can get the team selection right. We can prepare the players properly, but ultimately they've got to take responsibility. And I think he was hinting very heavily that he felt a little bit let down by the performance, particularly considering they were 2-0 up. And all they had to do was, just remain strong in their game management, to be honest. But yeah, some worrying signs of just, a slight lack of passion is how I would describe it. And maybe some early season complacency and just a sluggish start starting to rear its head again.
Yeah, rinse repeat from last season. So we'll see who's in charge come the end of that one when they lift the trophy for the 20th time when we get to it. Let's go to the Bossel, Antwerp, Sint Truiden. The best way, I think, if you've just been absolutely hammered at home, to kind of just put all that behind you is to concede again within the first 2 minutes of this one. Sharon Sherry with a lovely finish. So easy, like no real pressure on, just to bring it down and put it around. Poor Joe Coppens, who probably had the worst game any goalkeeper might have this season. Let's go through it. So Dumbia's second goal, he probably should have saved. He got his hand to it, needed to push it wide. Couple of Ondrejka's goals, he needed to push in completely different places, but he didn't. Valencia's goal, I think he should have pushed into a different place, but didn't, if I remember rightly. Ondrejka's third, his hat-trick goal was fantastic, to be fair. Nothing he really could do about that. I do want to talk about Ondrejka because he's a player that I feel like I hyped up a little bit last season and felt like this guy's he's got some quality, he's got something about him, but we just didn't get to see it because of the injuries and kind of the inconsistency of them. And yeah, 2 of his goals are probably quite fortunate, but you still got to be there to score them, and he did do that, and it's great to see him get a hat-trick. It's great for Antwerp to see them score 6 goals without kind of Janssen actually scoring as well. That's a nice kind of not having to rely on him. He's very much involved, and I thought he had a pretty decent game as a central striker, but against this Sint Truiden defence, I think anyone's going to have a decent game. And it was honestly such a weird one because in the first half, they actually created a lot of chances and Antwerp looked pretty shocking at the back, but they just couldn't score. Like, they went quite attacking. Bertocchini started, Jerusalem started, Ito started. Like, you can't say that Tanzio didn't actually go for it in this one. Like, he put the attacking players out there and they just couldn't put it in the back of the net. Whether it was through their good play or Antwerp's poor defending, they were able to create, but they just, I don't know, like they couldn't do it. And then defensively, they were so shocking that there was like no real chance that they were ever going to win this game. And just losing 4-1 at the beginning of the season, fine, it's going to happen. Like you're going to have a game potentially at the beginning of the season with a new manager, new team, where it's like, this is going to happen. But to follow it up with this is like alarm bells just like popping off. And the Tanzia can kind of turn around and be like, this is what I've got to work with. And they may turn around to him and be like, well, look, Fink did this with this and you've now got to do this with this. Why aren't you doing it? I don't think a managerial change will make much of a difference. If they did go down that route, I can see them doing it at some point soon if they get another battering. And it does you kind of say, well, something's got to happen. But this is like relegation alarm bells ringing very, very quickly, aren't they? And these 2 results just back to back is what's so alarming. I don't really know what they can do to solve it, because they create the chances, but because they can't score defensively, they're all over the place. I mean, Coppens, probably that's it. He's probably not going to play again this season. They can now bring Kokobu back in after his Olympic kind of spell. But it was rough. And like you said, they're going to win 3-0 against Ender next week. But this is still, massively alarming for all concerned, especially Sint Truiden fans.
Was it me that set them up nicely for that? They can thank me for that afterwards if that's the case. Yeah, I mean, Ben's right. There's a couple of things we brought up last week in fact, we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. weeks in that they look lacking in threat up front and look really, really ropey at the back. The defensive issues are the biggest ones because they are conceding at a rate that is really alarming at the moment. And it's the sort of thing that early in the season, when this thing starts to kick in at this rate, when you're conceding an average of 3 goals, it's 3 games in. I should caveat it with that. There's plenty of time yet, but a pattern where you're conceding that many in a game and barely averaging a goal a game is one where you're giving yourselves very little chance without a good window, a good 3 weeks before the window shuts. So I would be worried all over the place from a St Truiden perspective. To be fair, Ben's right to point out that Latanzio did give it a right good go, actually. He was quite positive. The downside, obviously, is an absolute pummeling, which just underlines the issues of the previous week and an overall fragility about this side that just makes you think, I don't know what we're going to get. So in many ways, this weekend's game between St Truiden and Dender is actually going to be quite interesting because of everything we've talked about and set up. I think it might tell us kind of quite a lot about both sides in a way. Antwerp will be, I think, quietly content with their 6 out of 9 so far. Pretty decent all round. I'm glad I revised my opinion very quickly after match day 1 and my worries dissipated a little bit as well. They've brought in a couple of faces recently as well who I think could be good additions. Ben mentioned Odreka. He is a player who potentially this season could be his breakout season, if you like. He's got over a settling in period, some unfortunate injuries, and he had a really good weekend this weekend and actually showed, I think, what he can really do. We saw a lot of flashes of it last season, but nothing to indicate that he was going to arrive properly, and I kind of hope that this is a season for him because when he came in, he came in with not a big reputation, but certainly a bit of a pedigree in terms of what he could bring in a attacking intent, and he spoke very well about what he wanted to bring to Antwerp as well. Ben mentioned Cherie. He had a really good game as well, and I think St Truiden will just be kind of desperate for next weekend's game to kind of come around now, just so they can put the last couple of weeks behind them and hopefully start again, because that's the only way you can really approach that message from a coach's point of view.
My only question about this game is, maybe I'm still too much in my Olympics mindset, but when is the second set being played? No, sorry. Jokes aside, you guys said a lot already on Antwerp. Good start, all in all, of course. Ondrejka masterclass, I guess. You could even say the first hat-trick in his career as well. So that's he definitely got a confidence boost out of this Sunday. And Antwerp, on the whole as well, I guess they were really efficient. We have been talking about expected goals already. They actually only got 2, around about 2. They got 6 instead. In this case, it has to do a bit with Koopman's performance, unfortunately, for him as well, of course. And for Sint Truiden, I even noted down, well, I guess I'll water it down a little of what I wrote down, because that's just dead and buried after 3 games. But I guess that's a bit too harsh, and there's a lot of time and a few transfer windows in there. I have to also already nuance that dead and buried after 3 games if they don't go for a complete overhaul. So that's already calculating that they probably will have something else still. Van Helden also on his post-match interview openly saying, he was just asked, are you missing quality? And he just said yes. So that's a quite clear message, and okay, it's an obvious one as well, admittedly. So, but they are definitely lacking some quality and need some extra quality. Yeah, also there another striker trying to steal a goal in Zahir Islam, who ultimately didn't hit the ball in, I think, in the empty net for Sint Truiden's for Sint Truiden's actual goal. Like Ben said, this game in theory at least could have gone completely different, because Sint Truiden actually had a lot of chances in the first half, especially as well, and they got then that 2-1 back as well. So you think maybe everything's to play for ultimately, especially knowing exactly that kind of turnaround happened in the game prior to this one. But yeah, then 2 minutes later it was only 3-1, and I think 5 minutes later it was only 5-1. So yeah, that escalated really quickly, and they went the wrong way for them. And not scoring, okay, still creating, that's the one thing. Maybe they're creating some things, but just who is going to score the goals, still quite unclear, and leaking at the back. Hopefully, indeed, that changing goalkeeper, which they now can make, might solve a little bit of that. But okay, he can't put, even though Koppels had a bad game, you can't say that he conceded 6 goals on his own, and that is that is his all his fault that he conceded 6. 1 or 2 of them, in this case, I guess you can put on them completely, but still 3 or 4 to go there. So, all the alarm bells are ringing, Sint Truiden early on. And talking about that game against Tinder, I guess if they lose this one, I would presume the Latanzio is already out as well, because that's already 10 points behind what was probably going to be deemed the main candidate for relegation. After 4 games, that would be quite horrific. But okay, everything is to play for there in that one, of course. But a lot of pressure on Sint Truiden there early on in the season, and just really a first must-win game already after 4 games in the season. That's quite remarkable.
If he goes, that's such a massive kind of red flag question of why did you bring him in then? Do you know what I mean? It was also completely out of nowhere when they did bring him in. It was just really randomly, suddenly they were like, this guy's going to be joining us, but he's not here yet, so we can't actually talk to him yet, but here's a post that he will be joining us. It was very bizarre. One side that we also asked kind of where the goals would come from were Charleroi. Maybe we should ask about Ghent as well, because obviously they lost. Dan Heyman scored again. What a player. He's Victor Mill just turning him into this incredible beast of a central attacking midfielder that pops up with goals here and then. But shout out to Yusuf Badji for the assist. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's at first I thought he just kind of bundled it to him, but it's actually a nice little kind of flick round the corner assist from him. Not great goalkeeping or defending from Ghent, to be honest, for this one. And frustrating starting to really mount there, especially after the draw with Sikkeborg away from home in the Conference League qualifiers. Expect them still to get the job done at home, but it's Ghent, so anything could happen. But losing to Dender and then losing this one to Charleroi, not just kind of losing, but the manner of the lack of kind of attacking excitement, which was a problem last season that they had. And you thought Franken, Mr. Attacking Football, would be able to solve that. But so far, it hasn't really happened. For Charleroi, guys, I thought that this is one of those games that last year they'd probably lose or it just ends 0-0. They don't have that kind of drive to get the win. That just wouldn't happen. Mazu time didn't exist for them last season, but this was kind of Mazu time. Maybe DeMille time has kind of overtaken Mazu time in that sense. And a fantastic result for them. And I think on the balance of play, they probably did deserve it.
Yeah, I think Charleroi are getting better. I think a lot of the work that went on towards the end of last season and has been continued through the pre-season is now starting to show a little bit. I think their mentality, as Ben was basically getting at there, has improved. They started this game pretty well. They certainly dominated the second half, and we're thinking, you're looking at it thinking this is going to, they're not going to get it over the line. But sure enough, Dan the man steps up and gets his 3rd and 2 and gets the job done. And he was absolutely delighted with that. He was saying afterwards that they're the sorts of goals as a striker, you really want to score, really late winners like that, really satisfying, particularly when the side generally played very well. Rick DeMille was pleased with their mentality and the overall performance as well. Another shout out, Adam Zorgan, another really strong game. He was chomping up everything in this game. They'll be just really, really hoping, I suppose, more than anything else, that he is still there, because he's playing quite well again at the moment since the start of the season. On Ghent, no shots on target. I think a lot of people have been talking about that this weekend. That tells you everything you need to know about their game here. I think Rankin was disappointed but also frustrated in this game. He was talking about how they weren't good enough on the ball. I don't think anyone would agree with that. But I thought, physically they were second best to everything as well. They were losing all the duels. They weren't strong enough physically, even in possession either, never mind when they were actually in any of the duels. So it was just a weak performance all round from them, where you're never going to get anything out of a game at any level when you perform like that. And as Ben was saying, thankfully they've got a European game which they should still turn around, but they turned round the first leg only to concede late on there and come away with a 2-2 draw. So they're still sitting okay, but I just don't know what we're getting with this Ghent side at the moment. They just seem to have that perpetual problem of flip-flopping a little bit. One week you feel like they're maybe making some progress, and then another week it seems all undone. So it's early days yet, and we'll see what they bring over the next few weeks. But yeah, Charleroi improving, and Ghent, I'm not sure where we're at the moment.
Yeah, this game had a lot of frustration on both sides written over it as well. Heijmans, after scoring the goal, actually just showing his anger with his own fan base. Riling them up because the relationship there is a bit troubled, I guess you could say, between the player and the fans. Well, but ultimately, of course, in this case, everyone will have been happy that he scored. And I think the fans will be happy if he scored more. I think that's a bit of where it all originates. But indeed, Charleroi. Good start with in the end for now, then with 2 wins in a row after an initial loss. Yeah, and Ghent, you mentioned it, 0 attempts on target. That's quite bad. Also conceding late twice in a span of 3 days, an issue that Franken's sides tend to have is something we can say as well. The fans are, of course, also already being frustrated earlier on with what they're getting so far. Unlike Charleroi, missing their start a little bit now with only 1 win. And now, a win on the first day and now 2 losses in a row in the league, and then also the disappointment in Europe as well, even though like you guys said, you would think they would still beat Silkeborg ultimately, but they would get that over the line. But still, there's already a little early feeling that Franken is already a bit under pressure there as well. Not as much as a pressure as other managers, but yeah, I think for him it would be good that they indeed convincingly beat Silkeborg in Europe and also next weekend get a convincing performance and points in the league.
It's just crazy, isn't it, how many of these managers are coming under pressure so quickly? Like, we're 3 games in and everyone's like, oh, they're under pressure. If the Circle game had gone the other way, people would have probably been like, oh, Milon's under pressure. But they battered Beerschot. Bruninho, Alagbe, Denki, Otara with the goals. Thibaut Sommer with 2 assists. He's on course to have a much kind of more productive season, or probably one of his most productive seasons. He looks like he's really... I think I said to you, Scott, when we were at the Kilmarnock game, I was surprised he was playing in that kind of behind the striker role, but he's actually doing it really well. I didn't think that was going to be a role that suited him, but... yeah, he's really taken on that leadership kind of mantle, and he looks like he's really confident in his own abilities at the moment. The Otara celebration, if you see everyone's feeling like the man needs to go to the 2028 Olympic Games and perform in the kind of like gymnastic floor routine for Burkina Faso, because those backflips are something else. He strings a couple of those together. I felt like someone's like, it's like watching Simone Biles. Not sure he's quite got the technique of Simone Biles, but it's pretty impressive nonetheless. Beerschot did have a couple of chances. Mainly they were just kind of like lumping it forward on the break and getting in behind a couple of times, which will be a slight concern for Circle in that sense, seeing kind of how easy it might have been for that to happen. But Varlas made a couple of decent saves to keep that at bay. This was a needed win for Circle, but I think also a needed kind of result in terms of 4-1, just be like, okay, no, we're still a good side, we can still play football, we can still take teams apart. Whereas, for Beerschot, it's kind of like really not a great start to the season at all. The draw with Leuven, the defeat to Union, the defeat here, they just look a bit... I don't really know what they're trying to do. I think that's kind of the question, is that I don't really know what they're trying to kind of achieve with, like, what's their style, what is Kaut kind of saying, this is how we're setting up to play and stuff like that. And he's been criticised as a head coach before, and it's going to be, I guess, because he's not like managing a side like Club or Genk or Ghent or that, where there's going to be a lot more spotlight on them. But he could come under pressure quite quickly, because that's a team that's like a side that have big financial backers in the sense of kind of the Saudi group that owns them and stuff like that. But you'd be slightly concerned if you're there. But even against Leuven, that Matthias was the kind of the man of the match in goal. So a difficult start to their season, whereas for Circle it's like, let's put the defeat, obviously they had a defeat as well in midweek against Molde, 3-0, really disappointing. Kind of to go down, to lose the away leg's fine, but to lose it in that way gives them a mountain to climb when they get back. But this result at least gives them some confidence going into that second leg.
Yeah, Cercle have had a slightly difficult start to the season. To be fair to them, a number of other sides in European competition have had kind of similar sticky starts to their own domestic season as well. Funnily enough, Ben mentioned the Kilmarnock game that obviously we were at the first leg of. Kilmarnock in Scotland have done a very similar thing to Cercle. They lost their opening 2 league games of the season as well. So, it's funny, it's the Sebastian Pognoli thing again of that August period of adjustment, and I think it was just really important. I think that Cercle got their first win convincingly, which they did, completely dominant this weekend. A lot of really good performances from some of their big players as well. Alegbe was great. Big Kev Denke has finally arrived this season, getting a goal and generally playing, the way you would expect to see him play. Abu Francis again, another strong game from him. So some of their big players really turning up when they need it. The win hasn't come entirely without cost, though. I think Van der Bruggen and Utkus are now injured. No update on that, so we don't know whether they're going to miss them for a while or not. So that'll be an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on. Ben mentioned Thibaut Summers, who I actually think he's been one of the most impressive players in the opening 3 weeks, generally for the level that he's set. I could mention, well, I did earlier, I mentioned a few players at Westerlo, but I think Thibaut Summers is worthy of a mention in there, doing new things, developing his game, as Ben was saying as well. And I spoke to him briefly at the press conference ahead of the Kilmarnock game, and I was kind of struck by how Thibaut comes across when you're talking to him as kind of quite shy socially, but when he goes onto the pitch, he's every inch the captain. He's a great communicator and comes across very well. And of course, he is Mr. Cercle. He's come through the ranks there. He's a great model and advert for the club and what they are absolutely all about. One other point in the Cercle, Bruninho's first goal. He is a player that Cercle are very, very excited about. When I was talking to Rembrandt Vermont, he says, keep an eye on Bruninho. He says, we're absolutely delighted with him when he gets really up to speed and gets some games under his belt in the league. We think he's going to do some big things, and he's so impressive technically. I really want to highlight how impressed they were with him technically, which is why they've brought him to the club. So he's one just to keep an eye on, and getting his first goal early obviously will be good for him. On Beershot, I was personally very delighted to see Ewan Henderson get his first start. Big fan of his. Didn't have a great game, bang average I would say, but you've got to start somewhere. But he's definitely the sort of player I think they need to give a run in the side, because he's got a lot to offer. The minorest of improvements on last week from Beershot, so minor you might not notice it, but my big worry about them is the same one that we've had since the start of the season. I just feel they're not competing well enough, particularly physically. They're getting outpowered a lot all over the place, and have done over the opening 3 weeks, and did again this weekend for me. So they still remain really, really lightweight, and if they don't sort that out, it's going to be a massive problem for them this season as well. So as I said last week, they know they've got a lot of work to do, but maybe that minutest of improvements on last week will be the only crumb they can take into next week.
Yeah, on their shot, indeed, it's not looking good. Also there, all the alarm bells ringing. Similar story to Sint Truiden, actually. It's no coincidence that both sides already are occupying the bottom spots as well. Offensively inefficient, defensively vulnerable, all the ingredients that are already in place if it doesn't improve, to really have a long season ahead of them if that does continue. On Cercle, first start, first goal for Bruninho, indeed. Scott already gave you a bit more information about him and the expectations of him as well. Scoring on their expected goals as well, which is, I guess, a good sign. Again, bad sign for Beerschot that they gave away so many chances, but okay. Scott already mentioned, Van der Brugge out, Utkus out, injured as well. Yeah, with Utkus, it's unfortunately a bit of the story of his Cercle Brugge career so far. Last season he missed around 15 games. I think that's including some national games, international games with Lithuania, but nonetheless, he missed 15 games. The season before that, he was actually out for the whole year. So that's, is becoming an issue. And that in a situation, they still look defensively vulnerable themselves as well. Like as Ben mentioned, and Scott actually as well. Like Beerschot still created quite a few chances and should have arguably scored at least one of them extra as well. Not that they deserved anything out of the game ultimately, but the defensive issues at Cercle Brugge still seem to persist despite this convincing win. And I do think that Cercle Brugge were actually quite happy to have to welcome this opponent to their stadium at this stage of the season in the situation they're in after also that European loss that looks difficult to handle, to turn around still. Hopefully they still will. Nothing's completely lost yet, of course, but a little confidence boost ahead of that return game, and also after, of course, also not getting any points in the league so far until now. So a much needed win, and indeed good for Denki that he could score. It was a nice finish as well, actually. Pretty nice behind his with a back heel finish and a bit of a lucky assist, I guess. Probably was more, he wanted to finish that one, but not probably. But nonetheless, good for his confidence and maybe for his mindset. Difficult to judge how their season is going to go from here, but still goes for every size. 3 games in, but a much needed first win. And worrying signs at Beerschot. I don't have much on them anymore. You guys already said a lot of things, and they just have a lot of issues at the moment.
Yeah, they better get a move on. Perhaps a new manager. I don't know. We'll leave that. I know that Joris has his feelings on Dirk Kuyt, and I'm sure many people do share them as well. That about does it for this week's episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed it, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. Do even leave us a coffee if you enjoyed it that much, or buy me a coffee. As always, thanks to everyone who has done that already. It's been just amazing generosity from all of you guys. It's been great to be back. Great to chat all things Pro League with you this evening.
It has, and I'm crossing my fingers and toes that we get some better results in Europe this week than we did last week. But a couple of those games, we're going to be up against it a little bit.
Yep, let's see what comes out of those games in Europe. And well, looking forward to see 35 goals or more next weekend.
That'd be nice. Hopefully, the goals can keep coming, and maybe some improved performances from other sides to make it a little bit more competitive would be nice.